All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Tessa Updike, and I am the archivist and an associate professor at the Citadel in Charleston.
And my name is Danielle Moore, and I'm the Deputy Director of Danielle Library at the Citadel and an Assistant Professor.
In our 45 minutes together today, we will start with a presentation, and then we will open up for questions and discussion. We'll share some background and history on the Citadel and our library and archive, and then we will talk about the class collaboration called Where We Come From that our presentation focuses on. We will share research methods and stories from what we've discovered, and then we'll share feedback and lessons learned. And so we'll start with a brief history of our college. The Citadel was founded in 1842 in Charleston, South Carolina. In the early years, there were two campus locations. Freshman cadets would attend the Arsenal Academy in Columbia, South Carolina, and then transfer to the Citadel in downtown Charleston for their remaining 3 years. During the Civil War, cadets from the Arsenal and Citadel were formed into what was called the Battalion of State Cadets and were called up numerous times by the governor of South Carolina to fight in engagements for the Confederate States Army. At the end of the Civil War, the college was taken over by federal troops and closed, reopening 17 years later in 1882. At the end of World War I, the Citadel was out of space to expand at its downtown location. In 1922, the college moved its campus to the west side of downtown Charleston along the Ashley River, which is where we remain today. Today, the Citadel has approximately 3,500 students. About 2,000 are in the Corps of Cadets, our main undergraduate body. Our cadets live on campus in barracks buildings, they wear military uniforms, and they live and study in a military environment. Over 1,000 of our students are made up of graduate students, veteran students, active duty, and online students.
The Danielle Library offers instruction in the use and evaluation of library and information resources to the Citadel students at all levels, from first-year courses to advanced graduate seminars. Usually the library sessions are requested by individual instructors, but our freshman college success course, referred to as Leadership 101, the first-year experience, has a mandatory library instruction session. There are typically around 35 sections of the Leadership 101 course in the fall semester.
The Citadel Archives is an institutional repository. We have collections dating back to 1842 when the college was founded. Examples include institutional records and publications, photographs, letters, diaries, architectural drawings, and artifacts. All of our collections are stored in climate-controlled spaces in the Danielle Library. We also have a small museum on the third floor of the Danielle Library, which features a timeline of Citadel history, a recreation of a cadet room from the early 20th century, a display of class rings dating back to 1895, and artifacts from the history of sports at the college. And the bottom right picture is of our archives reading room, where researchers use our collections. So the teaching collaboration that we'll focus on today is a class presentation that we give to freshman cadets as part of their leadership orientation classes in the fall semester called Where We Come From. This class features stories of history that have been underrepresented in our institutional narrative. And I'll talk about how we discovered this history, and we'll share some of these stories in just a moment. Since I joined the Citadel about 8 years ago, I've offered class presentations on archival research, primary sources, and overviews of Citadel history and our collections. I also collaborate with faculty members to create class assignments where students use our collections. Popular classes include a deep dive into cadet rebellions from Citadel history and exploring the history of photography from the college. Starting in the fall of 2022, I offered to give our Where We Come From presentation for freshman leadership classes, which all of our first-year cadets take. The first year, we reached about 180 students. The second year, we reached over 400, and this past school year, we reached nearly all 700 freshman cadets. Danielle and I offer most of these presentations ourselves, but this coming fall, we will be inviting additional faculty members to help present to lessen the teaching load. So how did this Where We Come From project come about? When I first joined the Citadel 8 years ago, I was coming from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I had worked for about 7 years. I was excited about working for the Citadel, but I needed to learn about the college's history for my new role. I started by looking for all of the books and articles I could find about the college's history. I read everything I could find to get a sense of how the college's history has been told over time. Once I read through books and articles, I also started looking at those institutional publications that include brief histories of the college, and I looked for changes in how that history has been told. As I was reviewing these histories, it became clear that there were a number of important things missing from our institutional narrative. And I'll give one example with the brief history that is published on the Citadel's website. On the Citadel's website, there are 10 paragraphs detailing engagements that the Citadel fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War, but there's only one sentence describing the racial desegregation and the entrance of women to the Corps of Cadets. And that one sentence reads, "The first African-American cadet entered the Citadel in 1966, and the first woman entered the South Carolina Corps of Cadets in 1996. No names, no indication of who they were, how they came to the Citadel, what their experience was like, or even that they graduated. And so it was clear to me that there were some important pieces missing from this narrative. And once I had a good foundation in place to explore Citadel history, I started to make a list of the stories that I knew were missing and thinking about where I could find that information. Some of the first priorities to research and tell stories related to gender, race, and ethnicity at the Citadel over time. And so a good place to start was to look at the enrollment of our students over the past 180 years. I was particularly interested in when cadets started matriculating from different states and countries over time. Looking at enrollment data in our annual reports and cadet registers, we made a digital map that shows the first cadets to matriculate first from different counties in South Carolina in the 1840s and 50s, and then from different states and countries over time. We found details on the lives of some of these cadets using Ancestry.com, which has helped us to tell their stories. We started by looking at cadets who came from long distances within the United States, from California and from Hawaii, and then started researching the lives and experiences of cadets who came from different countries and who spoke different languages. And we'll share a few stories from our research, which are included in these class presentations.
The first Hispanic students to matriculate into the Corps were recruited in the summer of 1904 when the college sent a faculty member to Cuba to advertise the school. 8 young men came to Charleston that fall to become freshman cadets. But when they arrived on campus, they realized that there was some miscommunication between recruitment and matriculation, as the cadets from Cuba were under the impression that they were coming to Charleston to learn the English language, not to take classes in English. This is the only picture we have of these students published in our 1905 yearbook. We weren't able to match any of their names to the picture, unfortunately, because it was just labeled Cuban cadets. The Citadel wasn't sure what to do with these students when they arrived, so they wound up creating a freshman class just for those Cuban cadets, separate from the rest of the freshmen. You can see in this list from the cadet register that year that the first 3 names are numbered. Those are the students who are fluent enough in English to stay past their first year. None of the students in this first cohort from Cuba stayed the full 4 years and graduated. We're going to put a link into chat for a research guide we made for these Cuban cadets. The first cadet of Chinese descent to attend the Citadel was Wu Ying, pictured here, who attended for the fall semester of 1911. After Wu Ying, a cohort of students from China attended in the 1920s and 30s, funded by the Boxer Rebellion Indemnity Program, which sent young men from China to study at colleges and universities in the United States. We know a good deal about these students from China because of a woman named Laura Bragg, pictured here. Laura Bragg was the first female director of the Charleston Museum and was fascinated by Chinese language, culture, and politics. When she heard that these students were at the Citadel, she went to introduce herself. She loaned the students her car so they could drive around Charleston. She let them stay in her vacation home, which she called Snug Harbor, and that became their home away from home. While many of the Chinese cadets were at the Citadel, and when they left and returned to China, they wrote Laura Bragg letters. She kept those letters, and when she passed in the 1970s, she left that collection to the Citadel. And so we have these letters in our archives, and through them are able to better understand their lives and experiences. And we're going to share a link in chat for a research guide with more information about this as well.
In 1966, Charles Foster became the first African-American student to enter the Corps of Cadets. Foster wasn't only the first Black student in the Corps, but was also the only Black student in his class and at the Citadel. So imagine what that must have been like and what it must have felt like in 1966 in Charleston, South Carolina. Charles Foster graduated with the class of 1970, then served in the Army. After his service, he moved to Texas, where in 1986, he was killed in an accidental house fire. Charles Foster was only 39 years old when he died and didn't have the chance later in life to share his story with our archives. And so when I joined the Citadel, I started a project called Charles Foster and the Black Experience to build a collection that would help us to better understand his life and his experience at the Citadel. Through this project, and with the help of the Citadel's African American Alumni Association, we reached out to Charles Foster's older brother, William, who lives in North Carolina today. In the summer of 2018, we invited William Foster to Charleston to meet with our college president, General Walters, and with faculty, staff, and alumni. During his visit, Mr. Foster recorded an oral history interview with us focused on his brother. The interview can be read and watched on our archives website and helps to tell a more complete story for Charles Foster. And I'm going to put that link into chat. In 2019, we invited African American members of the class of 1973, who are our oldest living African American alumni, to share stories of Charles Foster for our archives. All of these gentlemen were freshmen when Foster was a senior, and all had at least one story of an interaction with Charles Foster and reflections on Foster to share. The full interviews and transcripts are on our website, but we also, with the help of our campus videographer, put together a 3-minute video using these interviews, which we use today as an introduction to Charles Foster and his legacy at the Citadel. And we'll play that video now.
I think it's important for us to remember Charles Foster because, in my opinion, he was a hero. Charlie Foster, as far as I'm concerned, is the standard bearer for what all of us ought to be about. He's a good example. We can always point to Charlie and say, you know, Charlie did it, and he was the first. So how can we quit? You always remember the first. There's no doubt about that. And as a black man, you have to remember the first in South Carolina because he went through the integration. I think recognizing the first is not nearly as important as recognizing the human being who was the first. The man who gave so much of himself, took such a toll on his life that he was never the same. He was never what he intended to be. I knew Charles Foster from high school. He graduated from C.A. Brown High School in 1966. In high school, he was a very affable, buff, outgoing guy, football player. At Citadel, he was still very fit, very buff, but very reserved. Something had changed. Charlie had to go through pure hell. The isolation is probably the big thing because you're isolated so much. as an African American. And that sense of isolation weighed heavily on him. And the community had so much invested in him that that burden and that pressure was not only at the institution, but when he left the campus and he would go home. But I also know that he felt the strength to continue on because he knew he was doing something that was very historic and that would make a statement for generations to come. The connection you have to this institution is emotional, but we are bound and determined to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes we made 50 years ago with Charlie Foster. The only way you can make this place better is tell the stories of people who've been here, both white and blacks. Tell the story of how they found an accommodation for each other, how they found a place where they could be friends, where they could socialize, where they could have an interaction. We need to celebrate what he began. He truly opened the doors for what we're seeing now, the racial diversity, the gender diversity that we're seeing now is all because of Charles Foster opening those doors. And to me, we need to celebrate him and elevate him to the position of honor that he deserves.
Until the 1990s, the Corps of Cadets was all male. The legal battle for coeducation in the Corps of Cadets began in 1992 when 3 female veteran students applied to take classes during the day on campus with members of the Corps. Until that time, only male veteran students could take classes and women took classes in the evening. In response to this lawsuit, the Citadel made the decision to stop allowing any veteran students, whether male or female, to take classes during the day, rendering their lawsuit moot. In 1993, Shannon Ritchie Faulkner from Powdersville, South Carolina, initiated an action claiming the Citadel's failure to admit her to the Corps of Cadets violated her equal protection rights guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. Shannon Faulkner took classes full-time for 3 semesters until the courts ruled in the summer of 1995 that she was to join the Corps. During that time, the stress, emotions, and threats against herself and her family left her emotionally drained, and she left the Corps just a few days into the fall semester. Nancy Mace, who is a congresswoman for South Carolina today, was one of those first 4 women and became the first woman to graduate from the Corps of Cadets in 1999. 2024 was the 25th anniversary of Nancy Mace's graduation, and the Citadel organized celebrations on campus. This was the first time women had been invited back as a group to reflect on their experiences. As part of this celebration, we extended an invitation through the Citadel archives for any women graduates from the Corps to record short interviews for the archives on their cadet experiences. We'll share a short clip now of some of these women introducing themselves.
Hello, I'm Blasa Zekulich. I'm class of 2002.
Hi, I am Mary Elizabeth Thornton. I am a graduate from 2005 November Company.
My name is Laura Houston Holmes. I am Citadel class of 2007 F Troop. Hi, my name is Laura Curran. I'm class of 2009, graduate of the Corps of Cadets here at the Citadel. Hi, my name is Francesca Jordan, Francesca McCrary when I was at the Citadel. I am a class of 2012. I graduated from Tango Company. My name is Amanda Rudnick. I am class of 2015 and I was Bravo Company. The first thing they did was take us to the barber shop and cut all our hair off. They spin you around to where you can't see yourself. Like they spin you to where you can't see the mirrors anymore. And the guy comes and takes his clippers. And at the time I thought, because everyone I saw had hair like here. So I was like, oh, it's not that bad. I didn't really realize that they did your 1 inch on the side, 2 inches, 3 inches on top. So he comes with clippers and just starts going at it in the background. And all the while, you have upperclassmen cadre screaming at you about how ugly you look and all this stuff. And so I was like, then they spin me around, and my immediate reaction was like, oh my gosh, like you can't touch it and you can't cry because then you're just fresh baked. So I'm like, okay, just get me to the bathroom, get me to the bathroom. So they take us in a line to the bathroom, and then I'm in the stall, and that's when I did this and realized, oh my gosh, what have I done?
You can find these videos along with a couple of virtual panels that we recorded with alumni in the link we also put in chat. So today we are working to collect and share LGBTQ plus stories and voices from Citadel history. William Koob was class of 1968, and he was interviewed in 2010 about his life and his cadet experience. He shared that while a cadet, he was trying to understand who he was. He said that he would come to the Danielle Library to research what homosexuality was and would hide in the remote corners of the library where nobody could see what he was reading. At that time, he said that his understanding of what it meant to be gay was negative and that people who were gay had some sort of sickness. Koob had served for 14 years in U.S. Army intelligence, and he achieved the rank of major. While stationed at the Pentagon in 1987, he admitted under interrogation to being gay and was forced to resign his commission under a policy that allowed the military to discharge service members based on their sexual orientation. This was prior to the policy known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was intended to allow LGBTQ plus Americans to serve their country, but also force those service members into secrecy. Koob said in his 2010 interview that one of the pivotal moments of his life was when he came out to his father, a retired Army colonel, who told him that while he may not fully understand his son, he loved him. As part of this class and presentation experience, we made a display with pictures from our archive, which we had professionally printed and mounted in our library. So when we give this presentation on campus, we use this space, and at the end, we invite audience members to walk around the display and then discuss the stories with each other.
At the end of each class and presentation, we ask participants to fill out a feedback form. These are responses to the question, what is one image or story that stood out to you the most and why, from some of the cadets who were in these classes. We won't read them aloud, but we'll give everyone a minute to read them silently. And then this recording, I think, will also be made available so you can come back to these slides. And so these are student responses to the question, why is it important that the Citadel research, collect, and share stories of underrepresented histories? And we'll give just a minute to read. And so hearing these stories shows our students as they first enter the Citadel that we are strongly committed to sharing a complete and inclusive history of the college. It gives our students motivation and inspiration, showing them the challenges and hard-won successes of those who came before them, who shaped the Citadel into what it is today. And it allows our students to walk for a moment in the shoes of those who had a different experience than them.
We also ask our faculty and staff that attend our sessions to fill out a feedback form. Some of the responses are after the leadership classes, and some are from professional development day presentations we have given the past 2 years, and those are mostly attended by staff. These are responses to the question, what is one image or story that stood out to you the most and why? And what, if anything, resonated with you or challenged you with this presentation? And we'll give you a moment to read over these as well. And these are responses to the question, why is it important that the Citadel research, collect, and share stories of underrepresented histories? And I'll give you a moment to look through this. We also asked the faculty, after this class, did you have a follow-up discussion with students about any of the stories or history included in the presentation? We received answers ranging from using reflective writing prompts in class about resonated with the students to having small group discussions in class. One instructor said they discussed how they were all part of the Citadel's legacy and that one day they may be a part of the presentation or featured in the archives. The importance of sharing these stories because it makes being a member of the Corps more meaningful was a common theme in the student feedback, and it is really encouraging to see them making that connection.
I have been at the Citadel for 8 years now, and I am thrilled that we are at a point where not only are we able to give these presentations to freshmen when they're first matriculating, but also that we have so many stories. It's hard to choose which ones to include every year. One thing that we agonize over each summer is how hard it is to select stories to fit into a 40-minute presentation. In terms of researching and collecting stories, one of the things that stands out to me over the years is the importance of building trusting relationships with individuals and family members whose stories you are preserving and sharing through your archive. Many of the stories we've heard from alumni of their cadet experiences are difficult to tell with strong emotions. And there are alumni who have been estranged from the Citadel because of their cadet experiences. And you really can't start with an invitation to sit down in front of a camera to tell their story. You have to start with building a relationship and demonstrating that you are interested in the truth, not just a story that makes the college look good. And so another piece of this work is to build trusting relationships with administrators at our college to make sure that there's an open door to what sometimes can be difficult conversations about the history that you're learning and collecting and sharing with the public. It's also important to make sure that all of your audience members feel included in the presentation. While many of our stories focus on gender, race, ethnicity, and sexuality, we open our presentations with the digital map of cadet enrollment, and our first 2 stories are of cadets from California and from Hawaii. We also include a story of our first veteran student graduate from 1945 and a story of a World War II era class where nearly all of the cadets were drafted before their senior year began. So we do our best to share stories that everyone in the room can see themselves in our institutional narrative and Citadel history. And so I'll end by sharing that I am always surprised by how positive our feedback is. There are so many classes where I can't tell what our students are thinking or feeling during the class, and then I'm really overwhelmed by their positive feedback and their thanks for the work that we're doing.
I want to start off by agreeing with Tessa that I'm never quite sure how the presentations are going to go at the beginning. Every session really does have a unique dynamic, but it is overwhelmingly positive. And experiencing these positive reactions and then having discussions with participants, and sometimes this is long after our presentations, I think it really motivates us to continue. Although my background is primarily teaching information literacy, collaborating with Tessa on this research has really been so rewarding for me personally. As a librarian, it's really no surprise. I do love research. I love to do the fun deep dives into topics I personally find fascinating. But doing this research has really helped me understand the school in a lot of ways and the students better. I'm constantly learning and taking in these stories just as those we present to experience them as well. We do solicit ideas for future research on our feedback form. We ask, if you could commission any research about the history of the Citadel, what would you want to know? And from this question, we have received, for example, several requests for LGBTQ plus stories from the Citadel history, and that led us to collect and share those in our presentation. We do have a lot of future research ideas. We have quite an extensive list, but just a few examples are we would like to explore the first ladies of the school, the president's wives, interviewing our first female vice president and other firsts, and there are many, but one example is our first Native American students. As we keep mentioning, there are so many stories out there to choose from, and we really hope to include others who would like to assist us in this research, especially involving students in that. Looking forward, this fall we'll be going into the 4th year that we offer these sessions. So it really kind of feels full circle that after that, most every student here will have participated in our presentations. And just seeing how this project has advanced and really expanded offers us hope that students will continue to have this fresh perspective by deepening their understanding of experiences different from their own, foster a stronger sense of belonging across our diverse student body, and inspire our incoming students as they begin their own journey here at the Citadel.
Thank you, Danielle. All right, that's our presentation portion, and we want to thank Dan Hawkins from the Citadel, who has been doing our slides and tech for us. Thank you, Dan, and we can close the slides now. And we have about 10 minutes left in this session together. Danielle and I are happy to answer any questions that you have, if you have any thoughts, or even if you'd like to share similar projects or classes that are happening at your own institutions. We'd like to invite anyone who's interested in speaking to unmute yourself, or if you prefer to put something into chat for us. And I see Annie in chat has asked for a link to the presentation. Annie, if you meant the Where We Come From presentation, I'm going to put a link in chat. This goes to videos that we have recorded for the Citadel archives. We have an older version of a Where We Come From presentation in this video, in this this website of videos. We have not recorded the current, we make changes every year with different stories and themes that we've been researching the year before. And so it changes a little bit every year, and we don't have right now a digital video from our most current version. And Katie has asked, have you had any pushback from admin on any of these stories? For example, are they comfortable with a story that doesn't make the school look good? That's a great question, Katie. So I'll start by saying, we are at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, and our school history dates back to 1842. And so we knew, starting this work, that not everyone would be happy with the work that we're doing, especially around some of the more controversial subjects. So for example, we don't include this in our class presentations, or we haven't included it yet, but as part of this larger Where We Come From project, we joined a consortium through the University of Virginia that's called University Studying Slavery. And we have been doing research and documented the Citadel's connections to slavery in its early years. And so we knew that this would be controversial with some members of our campus community and alumni, and even members of the public. And so when we started that project, we didn't actually go out and embark on it on our own. We asked our provost at the time, Dr. Connie Book, to write a letter to the University of Virginia asking us to be able to join that consortium, and stating herself why she thought it was important for us to know that history for our own college. And so we have a pretty open line of communication to our administration. And our provost and our president, they know all of the work that we're doing, and they've actually, been in some of our presentations in classes and things like that. Not everyone's going to be happy with it, and yes, we hear, negative comments a lot, just being where we are. But we have never been asked to not share something from Citadel history, because it's our college's history and it's the truth, and we're really grateful for that. That's a great question. Danielle, I don't know if you wanted to share anything else with that.
No, that's a great answer, but yes, that's a common question that we do get.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Katie, for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah, and different colleges and universities have different circumstances, but we've worked really hard from the beginning to involve our administration in the work that we're doing. So at least they're aware of what we're doing, if not directly involved. Yeah. And Elizabeth, thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's a wonderful comment.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, and one of the reasons I came to the Citadel from, I was living and working out in California. I worked at the Bancroft Library at UC Berkeley for a couple of years, and then was the archivist for the San Francisco Conservatory of Music for 6 years before moving to Charleston for this position. And one of the reasons I came here was because I was just fascinated with the Citadel's history and really excited. So my position when I joined as archivist, it was a tenure track position, and I achieved tenure a couple of years ago. And I knew that there were just so many amazing scholarship opportunities with the Citadel's history. So I really couldn't wait to just, dive into our collections to see what we could find. All right. Oh, what's next for you? Good question. Immediately what's next for us is, as Danielle said, we have been working recently on collecting LGBTQ plus stories from Citadel history through our Alumnus Stories program, which we started last spring. One of the alums who came back to us to share his story was a female cadet and then transitioned to a man after graduation. And so he has, this wonderful, unique perspective on the Corps of Cadets from his own experience. And he has introduced us to several individuals who are also able to share transgender stories from their cadet experiences. And so we're still working on building those relationships before we ask for interviews. But that's the next big piece for us. In presentations that we've given recently for faculty and staff members and at conferences, we've included his voice, and his story is actually, you can find his video on our Alumnus Stories website, which is through the research guides on our archives page. And then he also participated in a panel discussion for us last year. So there are multiple wonderful stories there that you can hear. I'm also excited. Danielle had mentioned stories of First Ladies from the Citadel. That was requested from a member of the English faculty who joined a presentation last year. And we've shared some stories of one particular First Lady who was the wife of General Mark Clark, who was president here in the 1950s and 60s. And she wrote this amazing book. Danielle, what was the title? It was Captain's Bride, General, maybe Captain's Lady, General's Bride, or something like that. Yes, and she had actually her autobiography that we could, incorporate stories from. But there are just, so many amazing First Ladies from the Citadel, and I'm excited about diving into those. We actually haven't started that research yet. And Danielle, what are you most excited about researching or collecting?
Well, I would say the women's history research is always probably my favorite, most interesting. I spent a lot of time researching. There was a Faculty Wives Club here. It kind of stopped in the 80s, but it started like 40s, I believe. And it was just, we have a lot of donations and archives of like scrapbooks they had. And like, it just really told, the story of these women who, weren't necessarily able to, maybe do all the things they wanted to do, but how they were able to contribute and these full lives that they led. So I just really, kind of immersed myself in that. And then I'm also, I'm wanting to do an interview with the first female vice president here at the Citadel, The speech lab is named after her, and as a personal connection, she happens to be my neighbor. So I know her well, and I just would love to talk with her.
And Danielle and I will be working with a member of our English faculty this summer, and we're going to start researching and writing a manuscript to submit to journals on researching, collecting, and sharing women's history at the Citadel. Even though the Corps of Cadets became coeducational in the 1990s, we have had women at the Citadel dating back to its founding in 1842. And so we'll be talking about how we found those women, what their roles were at the Citadel over time, and how they helped to shape the institution. And then also how we are working to make sure that their stories are heard and remembered and added to our larger institutional narrative. Well, we are at time. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. This was a really wonderful session. And we look forward to seeing you in other sessions. If anyone has any questions for us, you are welcome to send me an email. I'll put my email address into chat. And we're always happy to collaborate and work with other institutions. And so if you would like to chat more, please feel free to reach out to us. And Danielle's email is in chat as well. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.